We have invested in TVETs in this country, and we have students who are studying courses like diploma in mechanical engineering. But, Speaker, if we do not have an automotive industry in this country, then where are those students who graduate from TVETs? Where are they going to work in? So, Madam Speaker, I support fully that we adopt this policy, but we must be very cautious. We must have capacity. Number two, we must have enough funding in this country so that that automotive industry can be able to take off. But, Speaker, if you look currently, this country has banned vehicles that are out of the 8-year age. In my own opinion, it is a tragedy that we are going to realize its fruits very soon. Because what is happening in Kenya is that a person who cannot be able to afford an 8-year-old vehicle will only recycle the old vehicles in the market. And that is something that we must be able to relook at as a country, because we are recycling vehicles in the country. I have seen vehicles going to Uganda. I've seen very nice NZD's vehicles, what you call Toyota Corolla, they call it Nyoka in the local language. But, Speaker, they are essentially, if you look at them, they are essentially good cars if you compare with the recycled motor vehicles in Kenya. So, Madam Speaker, I support in terms that, of course, this will create employment, because one of the biggest challenges, and even the members will tell you here, the biggest challenge that we have in this country is unemployment. So if we have a good automobile company in Kenya that is well run, is well funded, it will be able to create employment, and most of our people will be able to benefit in this country. So, Madam Speaker, I rise to support the policy, the Sino paper on the automotive, on the creation or the setting up of the automotive industry in Kenya. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well, Member for Marakwet. Member for Funyula, the Honorable Wilberforce Oundo.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to the motion in hand. And I want to request KJ to be just patient, as he has always been. His constituency is just a walking distance compared to mine that we have to take is a long distance. Honorable Speaker, I stand here to make my contribution to sessional paper number 1 of 2020 of National Automotive Policy. And I must disclose, Honorable Speaker, I interacted with this policy at the formative stage while I sat in the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives in the last Parliament. And I want to put it on record, as one of colleagues has mentioned, that the government is lazy. Indeed, the process to adopt or prepare this policy started way back, I'm told, sometimes around 2010, but there has been push and pull by various players and actors in the industry. It's only last year, towards the end of last year, that we had a consultative meeting in the county hall that we were able to iron out very many issues with very many stakeholders. Honorable Speaker, the economic blueprint of Kenya, Vision 2030, envisages that Kenya should be an industrialized country by the year 2030, being a middle-income country, providing high quality of life for all citizens of this country. Honorable Speaker, for us to do this, we are not going to achieve that goal or objective by relying on agriculture. We are not going to achieve that objective by relying on primary industry. We have no choice but to move to manufacturing industry so that we are able to employ very many people, increase our GDP, our per capita income, and generally increase the quality of life. For us to do this, we have to focus on manufacturing. There has always been a target that 20% of the GDP must be attributed to manufacturing. But in the recent past, even the 9% that the Jubilee government inherited in 2013 has been falling down to the present level of 7.5. And this has therefore informed concerted efforts to review various policies, regulations, and laws pertaining to manufacturing in this industry. When you do a scanning, we discover that manufacturing or motor vehicle assembly and manufacture of various building motor vehicle parts is a potential industry for the very young people and the very many people we have here. Honorable Speaker, Kenya, and specifically Nairobi, pioneered the juakali industry. And that in juakali industry, our artisans can fabricate and have continued to fabricate very many parts that can be used elsewhere and all over. Honorable Speaker, many of us still remember with nostalgia the Nyayo cars. We were small then, and we reveled in it, and we were very proud. And we could write letters to our friends outside of this country and tell them, yes, we are also Kenyans, we are growing, we are going to have our vehicles. But typically, like all policies and projects in this country, there wasn't adequate feasibility study, there wasn't adequate research to ascertain viability in the long run. So consequently, Honorable Speaker, the Nyayo car just fell off the line, and that's where we are today. If you take your time to go to numerical machines complex, you would see the kind of fabricators and machines that are there. You would wonder why we continue to import vehicles. You would wonder why we continue to import vehicle parts. Honorable Speaker, we have now resorted to importing even used parts. And I must admit, many of us here, because of the hard economic times, they will always go look for ex-Japan brake pads, ex-Japan water pumps, ex-Japan fuel pumps, and those kind of things. We'll go look for ex-Japan slim engines, yet we have the potential and the capacity. That's why when I stand here today, I support this policy. And this policy, Honorable Speaker, has got far-reaching recommendations or policy prescriptions that, if fully implemented, will generally move this country to the next level. Our arcing goal of the policy, Honorable Speaker, is to reduce, starting from to increase the assembly from the current 7,000 units to 20,000 units in the 5 years. Honorable Speaker, to implement a total ban on importation of used, fully built units for commercial vehicles. And this, Honorable Speaker, we as a country, we must support. If you look at the details of the data available, commercial vehicles have been the biggest contributors towards accidents on these roads of ours. Commercial vehicles have been the biggest contributor to the damage on our road infrastructure. Honorable Speaker, used commercial vehicles that are in bad shape are the biggest contributors to pollution and emissions in this country. So therefore, where I stand, and based on data available, research available, it is important that we must implement the objectives and goals of this particular policy. Honorable Speaker, many of us have complained that total ban, eventual ban by 2024 of imported vehicles is counterproductive, and it will lead to challenges in this country. Honorable Speaker, that's far from the truth. The truth of the matter that this country, if we get serious, we can actually resolve that issue. One of the policy prescriptions, Honorable Speaker, is that they require to develop a vehicle purchase scheme to enable the purchase of new locally assembled vehicles. Support a progressive leasing policy for the public sector to expand access to new vehicles made in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, it has therefore to be a concerted effort, a combined effort, both as we ban, we must improve capacity. But more importantly, Honorable Speaker, we must have ways and means to enable Kenyans buy vehicles using a very flexible approach to in financing motor vehicle acquisition. Many have complained that fully assembled vehicles in Kenya are exorbitantly expensive. Yes, it is, because we have a challenge, the cost of production in this country. We have a challenge with technology, so that every product that we produce is far much more expensive compared to our neighbors. Honorable Speaker, we live in a country, we live in a region where we are extremely advanced. And the amount of investment we have placed in TVET, we have placed in TTI, has produced to us in this country artisans, mechanics, electricians, electronic engineers, and the rest that can actually produce, design, manufacture, produce these items for the purposes of distribution in the East African countries. Honorable Speaker, as we approve this policy, it's upon the Ministry, the Department of Industrialization, to move with speed, as I've clearly put in their policy, to develop regulations to implement the policy. And probably it might even require amendments to the various acts of parliament to develop a motorcycle assembly regulations. Honorable Speaker, allow me to make a few comments about a motorcycle which are metamorphosized over time to be called border borders. I come from the border point of Busia town, and in the 1980s, if you did not own a bicycle, you are not considered a man enough. Over time, motorcycles came, border borders came, they killed that spirit, Honorable Speaker, and it was always a joy, Honorable Speaker, to give a ride to a lady, a young girl, on a bicycle, and apply emergency brakes. And then when the bodies move, Honorable Speaker, you can go back in the evening and feel happy. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is important that the automotive industry, we urge all the stakeholders, be they motor vehicle dealers, importers, maybe those refurbishers, and who do all those kind of things, be they the new assemblers, be they the leasing companies. This is a panacea to our problems in this country. I urge them to accept and let us proceed and implement this policy. It's going to increase employment, it's going to reduce radiation emissions, it's going to reduce the adverse effects of climate change, and we are going to be proud as a nation in the East African region. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Undo, the master and originator of Border Border. Thank you and well spoken. Next to speak on this is Honorable John Kiare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm excited to be contributing to this motion on the consideration of this sessional paper number 1 of 2022, which the sessional paper itself being the NAP, the National Automotive Policy. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, manufacturing has acted as a growth catalyst for economies. We know what economies that have gone into industrialization and manufacturing, to what levels they have gotten in terms of development. And Mr. Speaker, this development has to be informed by policy. And this sessional paper is one such policy. Such policy ought to be intentional, Mr. Speaker. Such policy ought to be deliberate. And I have scanned through the 52 pages of this national automotive policy, Mr. Speaker, trying to see if it has lived up to these tenets of being intentional and being deliberate. And Mr. Speaker, I want to stand here and say that I support this national automotive policy. Mr. Speaker, this policy will provide an enabling environment for all the players in this automotive industry, Mr. Speaker. But beyond that, it shall start us on a journey of solving some of the problems that we are facing in places like cities, where we have a big problem of mass transport. We have a big problem of mass transit and public transport, big problem of congestion, big problem of development of infrastructure in the transport sector. And Mr. Speaker, we are not dreaming and building castles in the air. It is happening. Even in Africa, Mr. Speaker, Nigeria is in automotive production. So is Egypt. So is South Africa. So is Morocco. And even Kenya was well on its way to getting to the stages at which places like South Africa are in the 80s. Mr. Speaker, if your memory serves you right, you will remember that we had KVM, Kenya Vehicle Manufacturing, domiciled in Thika, where they would assemble the Land Rover. In fact, at some point in the 80s, there was an offer by Peugeot France company to have us manufacture a very popular variant of their Peugeot, which was called the Peugeot 504. I don't know where this offer slipped through the fingers and how we lost it, but by now, we will probably would be at the level that South Africa is and Egypt is. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, Kenya is only manufacturing parts. And even in that manufacturing, it's not even manufacture. It is actually assembly of parts. And this national automotive policy even lists the parts that we are manufacturing in this country. There are only 37 parts that we have been able to manufacture as a country. In this around 60 years that we have been independent, you can imagine as a country we are only able to manufacture, to assemble 37 parts. Mr. Speaker, then this policy becomes important because then we can take on from where we left it in the 80s when we were talking about Thika becoming the Bristol of East Africa, where we were talking about Thika becoming the Manchester of East Africa, Thika becoming the industrial capital of East Africa. At this age, Mr. Speaker, we shall be speaking beyond Thika. Because one of the things that has been captured in this policy is zoning, Mr. Speaker, where we delocalize the manufacturing not only of motor vehicles, but even the components and the parts that will go into manufacturing. So much so that your native county, Mr. Speaker, can take up a part and build an industry around a part. It could be a wiper, it could be a headlight, it could be a bumper. Another county where the Honorable Oundo comes from, Busia, would take up another part and they would manufacture another part. We in the Goreti South constituency would be left to do the finishing. Out of the hides and the skins of the cows that we are slaughtering at Githinjiro, the Goreti market, the slaughterhouses, we can be left now to imagine how we do the seats, leather, the finishing, the very beautiful finishing of these cars, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to my mind, a component that has been captured in this national automotive policy is the element of beefing up research. Because when we beef up the research, we shall now start understanding first the history of how you become an industrial country. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to vehemently refute and oppose the words that were spoken here by the Honorable Makilaps, saying that for us to develop, we will need to reduce on the CRE and the history and the soft subjects. Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why we are suffering as a developing country is because we are not emphasizing on the soft, subjects in this country. Mr. Speaker, any country that ever developed had a place for its poets. It had a place for its authors. It had a place for its historians. It had a place for its humorists. Mr. Speaker, as the West was developing, so were their artists at that time. If you do away with these soft issues, if you do away with fine art as a subject, for example, who will be designing these cars? The art of designing an automobile is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Countries that have mastered the design of a motor vehicle are exporting their talent. Countries like France, countries like Malaysia, countries like Asia, India in Asia are exporting their designers because as we develop, we cannot have a dichotomy of disciplines in academia. We need to develop our scientists. We also need to develop our artists. Research, Mr. Speaker, will also inform what kind of car we want to develop, Mr. Speaker. In this day and age, we have to start thinking about a green vehicle, Mr. Speaker. How about Kenya becomes the first country to design how we can get biofuels powering our cars in Africa, and we take the lead on that, and it becomes our M-Pesa. The way we were able to leapfrog to the front of the telcos with our fintech, we can leapfrog with biofuel and green vehicles in this country. They don't have to even be electrical vehicles. We can decide that we will power our vehicles with the seed of a tree that I know that grows in around Mount Kenya, a tree that has this one seed that has such high content of oils that can be developed to give us biofuels, Mr. Speaker. I hesitate to name the tree because I only know it in my native language. And I know some scientists here, if I named it, would be able to translate to English, Mr. Speaker. Research, Mr. Speaker, is going to talk to us about the interconnectedness of industries, Mr. Speaker. Because a robust automotive industry will give rise to other sub-industries around that effort, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, research will also inform how we approach the cottage industries. Mr. Speaker, think about it. Some of the biggest names in automotive industry are human beings. The companies that we know, Honda, Suzuki, Ford, Hyundai, Toyota, all these are individual human beings who started out in a small cottage industry, building a car. They are now international household names, Mr. Speaker. So we can have someone called Carrier, somewhere in Motoine, who will start assembling cars in a cottage industry somewhere at the corner of Nairobi in Motoine, and end up being an international name that will be recognized for the efforts of building a car of this nature. Mr. Speaker, I was extremely excited going through chapter 8 of the policy that is talking about communication, publicity, and information. What we know in this house needs to go out to the publics so that the publics become our biggest supporters in this effort. Mr. Speaker, chapter 4 of this national automotive policy lays out the objectives that we want to achieve with this policy. And there are quite a number of them. I'm not able to talk about them. What I want to put in as a last word, Mr. Speaker, if this minute will allow me, it is to say that as we are thinking about the national automotive policy, let us not be limited to only the manufacture of.
Give Honorable Kiari 1 minute, please, so that we hear. Give him 1 minute, please. Yes, you have a microphone close to you. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I humbly appreciate your magnanimity for these extra minutes to say that even as we are thinking about the national automotive policy, we will need to think wider because, and I've noted even in the national automotive policy, they have noted that we will need to think beyond just the manufacture of the vehicle, the car itself. We'll have to think about the passenger transportation framework. There have been some efforts in this country with the mass transit, with the mass rapid transit systems. There has been an effort which is now stalling in Nairobi of the bus transit, of the bus rapid transit system. There is also the thinking around two-wheeled automobiles, three-wheeled automobiles, or even quad bikes that are in the category of motorcycles. As we develop cars, do we have a space for all the automobiles that we shall be creating? Then if we think wider, we shall think of what infrastructure we want to build so that a vehicle on a highway should not be speeding at the speed of 110 kilometers per hour while there is a motorcycle on the same road, a bicycle on the same road, and human transport and pedestrians walking on the same road. So even as we are thinking about this automobile policy, let us think wider to see what else we need to develop beyond just building a car. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute.
Very well. Honorable Shakil Shabir, Kisumu East.
Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this consideration of session paper number 1 of 2022. I remember there was a session paper number 1, was it number 6? Number 9 in 1965. We never did anything. A beautiful session paper that was borrowed and used by Singapore, Malaysia, and others, and made us. We did the we did the work. They did the implementation. The biggest problem that we face is implementation. The national automotive policy is nothing new. It has been there in many countries: Nigeria, South Africa, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, many other countries. So what we're doing is basically following the old routine. Because so-and-so has an automotive policy, we must have an automotive policy. I have read this automotive policy, the 44 pages of it. And I'm going to say this, and I'm sorry, it's a good idea, but there was a good idea 20 years ago. Now they're coming up. I mean, what did they say? Seek to create an enabling environment for the automotive sector to realize its full potential and position as a major player in the industry. Aims to improving local automotive assembly ecosystems to expand the local market size by promoting manufacturing. It's good words, but literally we are talking about the old petrol vehicles over 40, 30 years ago. This was the automotive policy that was to be used for the Nio car. I've seen that Nio car. In India, they stopped importation of cars. They took an old Fiat model and built it 100% in India. They called it the Ambassador. Nobody, not even the Prime Minister of India, could buy another car other than the Ambassador. I sat in that vehicle, and if we got there, then they started the smaller vehicles, 1000 cc. Nobody, whether you were a minister or whatever, could go more than 1000 cc's. Not long ago, in the 10th Parliament, when I was listening, I was a member of Parliament, we were told we are going to ban all four-wheel drives, and we are going to bring Passat, and we are going to bring the smaller vehicles. And there was none other than the finance minister at the time, Uhuru Kenyatta. What happened? I think we went and buy some Passats because it suited somebody. We found the Mercedes were cheaper than the Passat to run. But the whole thing fell apart. If you look at our car park, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are full of four-wheel drives, totally inefficient fuel consumption, huge guzzlers of power. You go to the Westminster Parliament, people are driving in, coming in on bicycles. You go to the Malaysian Parliament, that's what they're doing. They're coming in on Malaysian vehicles, Malaysian and other things like this. So as I say, it's a good policy. We wanted it for the numerical machines, we wanted it for other things. But we have taken and cannibalized the automotive policy, a national automotive policy of other countries. I want you to read it, Honorable Kiari. Please read it and put it next to the one for Malaysia. Put it next to the one from South Africa. Why do we now want to go for this? What I'm hoping to do, we want to take this thing, make it relevant for now. How do we make it relevant? We don't need to go and produce those old computers. We want to produce these things. We want to produce vehicles that are now valid, hybrid, electrical vehicles, vehicles that can run on hydrogen, vehicles that can be hybrid. Mr. Honorable Speaker, sir, when I was the mayor of Kisumu, we started the bicycles, border, as my brother says. And there were not more than 300 borders in Kisumu. Within a year, with support from other people and the United Nations, we were over 10,000 border bicycles. We then graduated to motorcycles. We graduated to three-wheelers. Now the motorcycle is one of the most important vehicles in this country. You can go from point A to point B on a motorcycle. Many of us who don't care too much about big things have ridden motorcycles. I've seen Honorable Kerry rid. If I want to go to a place where there's a lot of traffic, I'll ride the border. The border is what we call, as you call it, grassroots economy, bottom up, if you want to call it that way. So what we need to do is to take those bottom up. Let's not go on the big vehicles. Okay, we want the lorries and everything else. The engines are made. The rest of that car, other than perhaps the engine and the engine block, we have the technology to make everything else here. We can make those bodies, we can make everything we can. But this policy says that a National Automotive Council is to be set up. Now who is in the council? Those old thinking of the past, KM, KVM, Nanani. They don't want produce. They don't want to have informer. The Toyotas are selling beautiful, they're selling their vehicles. The Japanese are selling their scrap vehicles here, and we are going and buying them. We are a consumer society. So when you hear, in my time I thought a Porsche was one vehicle that was used for specialized people. A Porsche. Nowadays you see Porsches here like anything, and they're not the Porsches we used to know. So what we are trying to suggest here is let's do the thing, but in a new way, like we did M-Pesa. We did not go for those old analog machines. We went for change. So the change we want is hybrid. The change we want is electric. I was in Pakistan not long ago, maybe 2 years ago. And then I found out something the other day. And I'm telling you this. They are taking a motorcycle, they're changing the rear wheel, and that rear wheel has an electric motor in it. It costs no more than So the time is, that's what we need to do. We don't need long, drawn-out policies. That's very good. Let's do them. But those are old policies that are going to take us back to the past. We need to look at this policy, and Honorable Kerry and others who know about this, we need to call them and say, hold on a second, where are we going? Are you now trying to tell us we want to build trams in London, here in Nairobi, or do we want to bring old technology? We don't. We want new technology. We need bicycle. The thing is, bicycle. Why can't we make a bicycle here in Dagoretti? They say it is that little thing is called an engine. We can't make that engine. Surely not. We have made so many things at numerical machines, Honorable Chair. I used to sell tractors. We used to bring scrap tractors from the UK. I used to rebuild that tractor completely as new here in Kenya and sell them for 2-year guarantees. And there was in Dagoretti that I used to do that. I used to go to numerical machines. If there was something wrong with the camshaft, I had it made there. I went, where the block was broken, we fixed it there. So I think what we have is the capacity. So, Mr. Chair, with those few remarks, I want to end, but I say this is the right thing, but in the wrong way. You don't need what we are seeing here. It is not what we want. We don't want a sledgehammer. We want to do it properly. Thank you very much, and I look forward to interacting with those people who have planned this policy. And let's not just do it because of the sake of policy, because it's been done by about 100 countries. Why do we want to be 100?
Very well. Your time is over. Well spoken, and I'm very happy that leadership is in the House. Honorable Wako is here and listening. I think the contributions are immense and good. Next to speak on this is Honorable Andrew Okwome, Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I support this motion under persuasion that we have to look at unemployment position in this country. We have also to consider the development situation in this country. We must be innovative. We must find out how we can create employment and also develop Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I do realize that most of the machineries we need are imported, nearly all of them. But is it that we are to do this permanently in our lives? The automotive policy that we use must be changed and tamed to help us develop Kenya and to help us create development. Our agriculture is in need of development. We need to have automotive policy that can enable agriculture to be developed. We import tractors. Some of the tractors we need could be very simple types which I'm told are found in India, and maybe if we decide to manufacture them, it won't cost us so much. We have to import that kind of technology into this country. That's the technology part, not the machineries. That's the kind of policy I think will help us out of the problem that we find ourselves in. The same thing goes with motor vehicles. I know my colleagues have spoken about this, and if you listen to them, they are really on excellent points which can help us. We have to change so that we are not the consumers at all times. I was listening the other time when the president of this country was speaking, and in fact, he adopted a policy of non-subsidy for consumption. He could only do it for production. If we are importing vehicles, even for the government or whatever, it doesn't matter how expensive they are. With that policy, we could not get any, subsidy cannot be given because we are consumers. But if we were to manufacture some of these things, the government will come in because that is production. That way, we'll be directing our resources to what will help us and create employment I was talking about. It will help us to increase our GDP level high enough to cause good development that we so much need. Things like even the motorcycles, the boda boda as it is known in Kenya, those do not need very complicated technology. If we adopt a policy that can help us manufacture these kind of machineries, we will be doing so good for our country. I know my friend who has just spoken, and he was waving to me negatively to indicate to me that this kind of policy has been adopted, and it was adopted a long time ago, but the implementation becomes a problem. Yes, that kind of situation is not isolated. We have so many cases where we make decisions, but implementation is conspicuously absent. So that's a different kind of problem. It is not what we can solve when we are discussing this issue. But in my opinion, the motion is timely, it is good. Even if it was there before, we need to renew it, and we need to ensure that implementation part is done with. Now, Mr. Speaker, the other part of the policy I would have liked us to really emphasize on is the spare parts for all these kind of machineries which we import. If you have a vehicle and a spare part is broken and you want to replace it, sometimes you wait for it to be ordered from abroad. Yet, the technology to produce it is probably present in this country. I would really wish that we examine these kind of things thoroughly and compare what's needed with our capacity, financially or in human resource, so that we can be able to do what can help this country develop, in order that we and our youth can get employment for us to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for having given me time to contribute, and I do emphasize that I support this policy. Thank you.
Honorable David Mboni, Kitui Rural.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to put my remarks to this policy. And on the onset, I suppose the policy, the session paper number 1 of 2002 on national automobile policy. Mr. Speaker, why I support this policy, this session paper, this policy, is because this policy will provide an enabling environment for automotive industry players to realize their potential and position Kenya as a major automotive manufacturer and improve the local automobile assembly ecosystem in order to expand local market size by promotion of local parts. Mr. Speaker, Vision 2030 and Agenda 4, they have put manufacturing sector as one of the pillars of this economy because of its potential to contribute to the GDP, gross domestic product, significantly. Manufacturing sector creates jobs. Most of the jobs in this modern jobs are in manufacturing sector. It promotes productivity and growth in this country. It also promotes innovation and services and trade, because most of the people are in this sector. They are in trade, and they are also in manufacturing. The sector contributes around 8% of the GDP. And automotive subsector is one of the subsectors in the manufacturing sector. And this sector in Kenya is growing very fast. As you can see the growth in the National Economic Survey. Demand for the spares is also growing very fast. However, Kenya remains a small producer of automobile services in this country, as compared to South Africa and Nigeria, Egypt and Morocco. So Kenya is a small player in manufacturing of automobiles in this country. Mr. Speaker, you recall 1990s, Kenya produced its first car, the Nyayo car. And I don't know what happened with that car. It's unfortunate that as Kenyans, we prepare goods which are produced from other countries. I tend to think if we emphasized using that car and encouraging the local manufacturer to continue to produce that car, even if it was moving at 80 kilometers per hour, I think we could have improved that car by now. And I think we'll be a big exporter of vehicles to East and Central Africa. And we'll be earning a lot of foreign exchange and creating a lot of jobs if we continued with that that venture. market for cars in this country is quite big. You can see the number of vehicles which we are importing. The saloon cars and also big cars. We are importing cars, motorcycles, and tractors in this country. And we are only for manufacturing new cars, only for public transport, the matatus, the big matatus. Otherwise, the Nissans and whatever we are importing. And we need, as a country, we need to think about using our own products. Even if we produce a car, even if it's not as ugly as what, let's use it. We are going to improve it as time goes on. But the moment we think about a Mercedes-Benz, a very good car from Japan or German, we are not going to move. So this policy to me is very important, and we need as a parliament to approve it, and the ministry concerned to come up with guidelines to implement the policy so that at least we can move. Because this policy, if implemented, we are going to create jobs for our students. There are so many students who are coming from universities, engineers, mechanics, electrical engineers, and automobile engineers. I remember last time, 2 months ago, there was somebody who had a student, a former student, who had a first-class degree in mechanical engineering. And he had no jobs. He had no job. In fact, he was doing cultivation somewhere in, I think, Mulango, somewhere there. So if this industry is really working and it has potential, that person will not be able to be doing manual jobs in the farms. We have students from polytechnics, the TPETs, which we are constructing in each constituency. The designers, all these ones will be able to get jobs, and they will also get incomes and increase the productivity, the GDP of this country. The new cars, if we produce them, they are going to reduce pollution. Pollutions, when you talk about climate change, pollution is one of the factors which are contributing to climate change. It is also going to save us our foreign exchange, because we are using a lot of foreign exchange to import cars. And that's why you see the dollar is increasing is appreciating every day, and our shilling is going down every day. But if we are buying these products, the cars and spare parts from this country, we will not be facing this kind of thing. And you know, when you import something, you are exporting a job. And we have so many youth, as I stated, who needs this job. So, but as we implement the policy, we also need to think about our roads, because our roads are very congested. Traffic jams are everywhere. I mean, you can't move. We need to design our roads such a way that we have walkways for pedestrians, and also bicycles. If you go to Europe, and in particular in German, I think they have the best lottery system. There are parts for where bicycles are used, motorcycles used, and the people where they walk and where vehicles work. So this is the kind of thing which we need to think about, so that at least we move this country forward. With those few remarks, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Well spoken. Next is Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Member of Parliament, Dagoretti North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the motion on sessional paper number 1 of 2022 on national automotive policy. Mr. Speaker, as I start, first of all, I want to thank all the mechanics in this country who have employed many people, who are the ones who ensure that our cars are moving on our roads. That means that if we have indeed a national policy of automating and ensuring that they are able to now start just assembling the whole car, they will do it. And Mr. Speaker, one of the things that kills this industry is how we have allowed, and you'll find those who do business now, who bring in these cars, are the ones who will now go and try to lobby to ensure this policy does not work. Today in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, we assemble many parts in the, of our vehicles in this country. We are able to assemble whenever a car comes in, but at the same time, you realize there are different parts also that we are able to manufacture in this country. But one of the things we must do is to learn the way the Chinese have done their policies, that they ensure you also bring in expertise who will support as you start building those small industries. But then you have an expert who comes in, and every person or any child of Kenya who will want to be in this industry, you are trained in a way you become an expert of one. If you're an expert of an engine, it is the engine. If you're an expert of just putting in the brake pads, you are that expert. And therefore, when you're assembling the whole vehicle, it moves from one station to the other, and you'll find you're creating jobs for many of our young people who have come from TVETs, who have come from the technical schools that we have, but they are able to now go into a plant and assemble this vehicle. We must be also very aware that we are in East Africa, and so when we want to do, or even to manufacture the vehicle, then you must look what type of a vehicle is being used in Tanzania, what type of a vehicle is it a left hand, is it a right hand, and so that we are able also to trade within the East Africa. The policy also brings what the other day, Mr. Speaker, you remember, we were saying that we unify the policy for SMEs. This also comes in to assist, that if you bring together this industry and you're able to remember all the mechanics that are there in every of our areas, you'll find young people trying to do small jobs, but they've employed each other. But I'm telling you, when you take your vehicle there, it comes out as a new vehicle, and they've just taken, some of the parts have been taken from Kenya, some of it they look at it and modify, but your vehicle, Mr. Speaker, will proceed. One thing we have to also ask ourselves is, how do we now work closely with Mombasa County to ensure that we also have a free port? That port does not mean now you'll come and dump vehicles there, but it means if you can indeed ensure you implement this policy and actualize what we are talking about, then those new cars are the cars you'll find at that free port. That anyone will come from the other countries now to buy new cars. You find that many companies, Mr. Speaker, are now in Kenya doing the assembly. Toyota is doing the same. You find Peugeot is doing the same. And many others who came in during the last regime who really wanted to work with the locals. And so what they do, they bring all the parts from their countries, we assemble. We will learn the same system. Instead of them bringing that same technology they are using in their countries, they bring it now here, because at least we've given them for the last 3-4 years. That's what they've been doing. And if you are building a country and empowering that country with capacity, I think our people now have learned the technology. It is time we assemble ourselves and have a plant that assembles any vehicle in this country. The other thing we need now to really work around, before we even think of the bike, can we be able, because even right now, Mr. Speaker, the spare parts, you find we are still importing for border borders, and yet we have more than 3 to 5, 10, I think now 5 to 6 million border borders across this country. And so it is already an industry. If we just had a plant that you are able to assemble, then that is one industry that would have built the economy of this country. We believe in the 2030 vision, Mr. Speaker, that it was to build this country into a middle-income country. And so for me, even as we speak about the sessional paper, there are some things that government has to go back and look in it and ask themselves, is it important that as we do all this, we should never leave those who already are in the Juakali sector, and they are doing it. This is how you promote, and they are fantastic mechanics, Mr. Speaker, who have worked with Toyota Kenya, who have worked, and they are outside there. And it means they understand the industry already. It's only that they are SMEs that are trying to build themselves. And I hope that even in the paper, that we have been able to capture how we are going to build their capacity, their innovation, how we are going to do research to help even them. Some of them can go back to class a bit and just build themselves in the new technologies that we are seeing. We are seeing electric cars coming up, and so let us build the capacity so that they understand. You can even take them out of the country. That is how many people, many countries have built their own young people and innovation. And I think Rwanda is doing it so well. So you take out your students for 3-4 months. When they come back, they are able. We have, Mr. Speaker, the standard gauge railway. So the locomotives, I doubt whether we have ever thought. We took our students to China. They were able to learn everything. But we need to ask ourselves, and maybe we need to have one day a sitting just to ask them, were you trained on how to be a mechanic, that when this locomotive needs to be repaired or maintenance, that it is you, that we are not calling again a Chinese to come and do that maintenance, is very important. So I'm hoping even as they speak about automotive policy, it is capturing everything that evolves around the transport sector. While we think about the infrastructure, we must think about negotiating also and enhancing that negotiation with the countries that already have developed so that we are able to work together. Mr. Speaker, lastly, I just want to say we do this is a house that brings out so many interesting things for the country, issues that can really transform our country. But I'm just hoping after we finish our part, Mr. Speaker, that also those who have been given that responsibility can be able to change, can be able to, we must see this transformation, Mr. Speaker. It is very sad, and I know you have been here now for 2 terms. It is so unfortunate that we just say, we have given, the laws are there, the implementation part is there, and yet those who are supposed to implement now in government, they find it so difficult to just do what Kenyans would wish to do. So I'm hoping, even as we talk about all these things, that we will see that implementation. And the implementation committee should take things very seriously to oversight and see that these are things that have been operationalized, but more importantly, have been implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That last bit, Honorable Wako, is for you, implementation. Next to speak on this is Honorable Zamzam Chimba, Mombasa County MP.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Leo naona mjadala mzuri sana, sijui kwa nini tuko wachache, lakini tutasukuma gurudumu polepole. Nikiangalia mambo ya viwanda na naangalia kwangu Pwani, naona tuna sehemu kubwa na viwanda vingi, yani kuna industries nyingi ambazo wanatengeza magari, wanatengeza tuk-tuk, wanatengeza na yale mapikipiki. Lakini ningependa kwanza kama inawezekana serikali iweze kwanza kupunguza ushuru kwa zile materials ambazo zinatumiwa kwenye kuassemble haya magari, kwa sababu kama kweli tunataka kuboresha uchumi wa Kenya, na sisi tuna nafasi kubwa sana ya kuweza kutengeza magari yetu tukaweza kuuza, basi ni lazima pia tufikirie tunatumia mbinu gani. Ukiangalia Mombasa tuko na Simba Corporate ambao wanatengeza Mitsubishi, Fuso, tuko na wale ambao wanatengeza Tata, wanatengeza Toyota, Hino, wanatengeza Scania, Volvo, Daewoo na hata tuna Abson Motors ambao wako sawa kabisa kwenye kuangalia matuktuk. Kwa hiyo mimi ningependa kusema hivi. Watoto wetu wengi vijana wako kule nyumbani. Wamesoma, wanajua ufundi, wameenda katika vyuo vikuu, lakini hawajapata mahali ambapo waweza wakaboresha ujuzi wao, wakaweza kuinua uchumi wa Kenya. Na mimi naangalia katika automobile, naona kama kuna nafasi kubwa sana ya sisi badala ya kuleta magari kutoka nje, na hapa Kenya tuweza kuwa na vijana ambao waweza wakapewa vifaa na wakaweza kuwa sponsors vizuri, wakaweza kutengeza magari yetu na ikaja vizuri pia kwenye bei ambayo ni nzuri, na sisi pia tukaweza kutoa magari yetu tukiweza kuuza katika mataifa mengine kama vile tunavyonunua kutoka kwao, na sisi pia tuwe tumeboresha viwanda vyetu vya Kenya, watoto wetu wapate ajira pale, waweze kuonyesha uweledi na ubora katika vile walivyosoma katika college, waweze kutengeza pia magari yetu. Bwana Spika, mimi ningependa pia kusupport mjadala huu kwa kina sana. Tukiangalia bodaboda wako wengi kweli katika taifa hili, lakini ukiangalia vizuri utapata hata yale mapikipiki yao wanaenda kuchukua kwenye deni. Anachukua deni kisha atalipa pengine mara 2 ya ile ambayo ingekuwa pengine imetengezwa hapa nyumbani na ikaweza kumfaa zaidi. Kwa hiyo mimi ningependa kusema vijana wetu wanaharibika mashinani. Vijana wameingia katika drugs, vijana wameingia katika makundi haramu, vijana wameingia katika makundi ya kumaliza watu kule vijijini kwa sababu wamekosa nafasi za kazi, kwa sababu kuna watu wengine wanachukua advantage ya hali zao, wanaweza kuwaingiza katika vitu ambavyo havifai. Kwa hiyo mimi ningependa serikali kwa mjadala huu na upongeza sana tena sana mjadala wa kuweza kufungua viwanda vya kuweza kutengeza magari yetu wenyewe, tutengeze matuktuk. Watu kama Absa Moto wako pale wanangojea, wanasubiri. Pengine kama sisi tutapunguza bei ama ushuru wa hivi vitu ambavyo wanavileta kuassemble gari, kuassemble tuktuk, tuweze kupunguza kwa muda pengine wa miaka 3 ama 5, na tuweze kuwapatia vijana nafasi ya kuingia katika industries hizi, waweze nao kujifunza. Wakijifunza pengine itakuwa ni miaka 3-5, watakuwa tumeshaboresha hii industry, na tunaweza sasa kuongeza, tukiweza kusafirisha na kuuza gari zetu katika mataifa mengine, na huku uchumi wa Kenya ukiweza kupanda. Bwana Spika, mimi kama mama ndani ya kaunti ya Mombasa nasikitika sana. Nafasi iko hapa nzuri, na ninajua kuwa kama alivyosema mbunge mwenzangu hapa kuwa ni mswada huu uliweza kupitishwa miaka iliyopita, lakini pia nina furaha kwa sababu niko katika implementation committee. Kwa hiyo nitakuwa mmoja kati ya wale ambao nitafuatia kwa kina kuhakikisha kuwa policy hii imefuatwa na tuweze kuboresha taifa letu katika kuwezesha kutengeza magari kama mataifa mengine, na tuweze kupeana nafasi kwa vijana wetu wa ajira katika serikali. Katika hili mimi nawapongeza sana katika huu mjadala wa leo. Bwana Spika, anaangalia sana pia sekta ya tuktuk. Kama Mombasa utapata wana import nafikiri kutoka India. Pengine hapa mtoto wa kiume amehangaika, ameenda juu chini, utapata tuktuk ile ananunua katika kwa bei ya 400,000 ama 500,000. Lakini ikiwa leo serikali yaweza kufuatilia kwa kina jambo hili la kufungua viwanda, na hasa mimi naomba viwanda hivi viwe ndani ya Mombasa County, kwa sababu mambo mazuri sana yameonekana kule, na tuna wale tayari ambao wako wanafuatilizia na wanaleta kina Scania, hawa kina Absan Moto, hawa kina Fuso, kina Simba wako kule tayari. Kwa hiyo mimi ningependa kiwanda kiwekwe kule na tuweze kukiboresha kwa kuleta bidhaa kwa ushuru wa chini, ili vijana waweze kusoma, na hawa ambao wamejitolelea pia tuweze kuwapunguzia ushuru, ili na sisi tupate ile elimu ya kutosha. Wale vijana wetu waliosoma katika makoleji waweze kuboreka zaidi. Hata kama watatoa gari aina gani, mimi naomba Wakenya tununue, ili tuweze kuwa boost hawa watoto. Hata kama watatengeza tuktuk, pengine melemea upande mmoja, tujue watoto wetu wanajimudu, wanajaribu, tuweza kuwa boost baadaye watakuja kuwa bora zaidi, na ninajua Kenya iko na tajriba ya kuweza kutengeza vitu ambavyo ni vizuri. Kuna wakati mmoja nilikuwa naangalia televisheni, nikaona mwanaume kule mashinani, mashambani, ametengeza gari na lile gari lilikuwa linaenda. Nikawa najiuliza, huyo mtu angepata mtu wa kumsukuma kidogo katika kichwa chake, akampa vifaa vinavyopasa kuwa navyo, basi angeweza kutengeza gari nzuri zaidi. Kuna mwingine niliona ameng'ang'ana kutengeza ndege. Mimi nasikitika, tuna watu ambao wamebarikiwa sana akili kubwa ndani ya taifa hili, lakini wamekaa mahali wanasikitika, pengine hata chakula hawana. Naomba serikali ichukue nafasi hii na iweze kutangaza wazi peupe kuwa yule mwenye ana ujuzi ambaye anaona aweza kufanya kazi hii, tuna kiwanda sehemu fulani, tuna walimu watakao waboresha, njooni mjiunge ili tuweze kuinua uchumi wa Kenya, tupatie vijana ajira waweze kujijenga. Kwa haya machache, Bwana Spika, mimi nashukuru sana, na leo ni siku ya furaha kwangu sana. Na kwa vile mjadala huu umetokana na serikali, nina imani viwanda vitawekwa na vijana wataweza kufaidi. Asante sana Bwana Spika. Huyu ni Mama Zamzam Chimba Muhammad kutoka Mombasa County. Asante sana.
Vema kabisa Mama Zamzam Chimba. Atakayefuata kuzungumzia mswada atakuwa ni Mheshimiwa John Gakuchia, Mheshimiwa wa Mkuruweni. Sijui kama na yeye pia atazungumza kwa Kiswahili.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, I can speak in Swahili, but you don't do it immediately after Mama Zamzam has done it so fluently. You wait for another day when you do it on your own. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to take this opportunity to support this sessional paper by the government, and I want to appreciate that for once we see a government which has intentions and is moving forward to ensure that these intentions also become a reality, especially in ensuring that our country takes on the next step in terms of manufacturing, in terms of industrialization, in terms of production. For far too long, this country has celebrated much more of a service industry, which does not really produce. And when you don't produce, you also don't grow the economy. And for us now to see this kind of a motion and a sessional paper, I really want to appreciate what the government is thinking about. And for that reason, I would like to add my word. I would like to add my voice on this and say that if and when we start manufacturing cars and assembling them in Kenya, we are automatically going to create employment in our country. And unemployment in Kenya is a crisis that is facing us and that we must deal with. And this is one of the ways in which, as a country, we are going to be dealing with the problem of unemployment. And it's not far-fetched, Mr. Speaker, that we are thinking about manufacturing of cars. I am reminded of a gentleman who used to be a tutor here in the Nairobi Institute of Technology, Nairobi Technical Institute, by the name Gitonga Mushao Wadhanga. This gentleman is now late, and he hailed from my constituency. And Mr. Gitonga actually did assemble a limousine, which was showcased in all our media stations. And we celebrated him for that. I remember even when we went for his burial a short while ago, a few months ago, the limousine was parked somewhere as a testimony of a Kenyan who lived and who gave his all, who was innovative and attempted to manufacture or to assemble a limousine. This he had done from B-15, those old type B-15s. And he was able to make a very nice limousine, which is still there till today, to date. And if our late friend had been able to get support from government, if this kind of a session of paper had been done and government had implemented this arrangement, he would probably have had support from government to start an industry that would have seen us growing our economy, promoting also that trade, and ensuring that we also become manufacturers and assemblers of limousines in Kenya. And that's why I believe in this country we have the capacity, we have the innovative minds in our young people, that we can be able to produce something that will be so unique. We don't have to just think about simple and small industries like manufacturing of smaller vehicles like the tuk-tuks. They are okay, it's okay, we can do that. But I know for sure as a country, we have the capacity to do even much more sophisticated vehicles, and will be the pride of Africa. I know if we do implement this policy, we are going to generate, or we are going to provoke, and we are going to stir other economic factories and industries in this country that are going to start based on this. You can imagine we have a leather industry in Kenya which does so well, or which will do so well to produce the covers for the vehicles that we are going to be assembling and manufacturing in this country. We will have the industry which is dealing with the mirrors and glass. I'm sure this is another industry that would actually come up in a very serious way. We have bodybuilding. This one is there, especially when we are looking at the minibuses and the trucks. We manufacture most of these, or we assemble most of those bodies from this country. But again, it's going to be enhanced. Mr. Speaker, I see a situation where if we manufacture these vehicles from this country, we are going to be an exporter to our neighboring countries. Most of the African countries, we can now have them importing their vehicles from this country, because then we are going to build a vehicle that is going to be built for resilience in this continent, because we understand our continent well. So we are going to have a more resilient vehicle that is going to be sold to other neighboring countries. And that means that then we are going to have inflows of foreign currency to our country. As it is today, we are spending rather too much on foreign currency outflows as we import vehicles from other countries. And of course, you know, most of the times we are importing vehicles which are more than 6-7 years old, and for that reason, which have a lot of carbon emissions into our air. And for that reason, you find that our air around this city is not quality, and it affects our health every other time. So if we do manufacture our own vehicles, we are likely now to have clean emissions. We are going to hopefully even take advantage of the new innovations in the market to be able to come up with even electrical vehicles that are not going to be consuming, or are not going to be generating or are not going to be powered by the fossil fuels that have very harmful environmental impact in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I really want to support this motion so that we generate employment, so that we grow our economy, so that we support the TVET industry, because, of course, you know, if we are going to be in this industry, we are going to require a lot of people who are well-skilled and trained. That means then we are also going to be promoting our TVET institutions. I have, for example, Mukurweini Technical Institute that will probably produce a lot of young people who have the capacity, the knowledge, the skills to be able to participate and to be employed in some of those industries which are going to help us as a country to be able to improve the well-being of our young people. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I finish, I want to support this motion so that we can also improve the environment. And today, all of us are aware, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of environment is taking center stage in our discussions as it is shaping the way we are moving as a country and as a globe. And so I dare say that as I support this motion, or as I support this sessional paper, I would like us to think about production of vehicles that are going to be powered by clean energy, so that we forfeit the fossil fuels, which of course have destabilized our economy in a big way because of the impact of international trends and the geopolitical politics that have affected the issues of exports and imports, especially when it comes to the issues of petroleum across the globe. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to support.
Very well. Honorable members, notwithstanding the motion passed earlier today, which increased the time for debate on this sessional paper from 2 hours 30 minutes to 5 hours 30 minutes, there being no other member with interest to speak on this sessional paper, number 1 of 2022 on the national automotive policy, I will therefore call upon the mover to reply. Thank you. I will now give this opportunity to Deputy Majority Party Whip Honorable Naomi Wako to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I stand to reply to this very important motion that we have debated. The members have given it a lot of attention, and that is why at the beginning we requested for more time. That has happened. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the honorable members who have taken their time to support this procedural motion and given us great ideas on how to implement where the gaps are. And from the debate, it is quite clear that Kenyans are looking forward to the implementation of this sessional paper number 1 of 2022. As a government that is in place now, the Kenya Kwanza government, I want to also congratulate our government to come up with this and to revive this, because as we have seen, since 2018, this policy has been there but not gotten any attention. But through this government now, we can see there is light at the end of the tunnel. Mr. Speaker, from the members' debate or contributions, we have also seen that Kenyans are people who are really talented. They are very creative and innovative. It is only that they have no opportunity simply because they have not received any support from the government. And we all know very well the goals of Vision 2030 is to transform our country into middle-income country, providing a high quality of life to all its citizens. We cannot achieve this dream if we cannot promote industrialization, if we cannot encourage our young engineers. We know very well, again, we have many graduates. We have taken so many of our young people to TVETs, and many of them come out with brilliant ideas, brilliant skills and knowledge. But unfortunately, they have not gotten the opportunity to exercise or to give back that to the community. We know country's prosperity is driven by radical actions to drive inclusivity in order to develop and also to make sure that we don't leave behind any member of the country. Mr. Speaker, it is quite encouraging that today members of parliament have deliberated, have debated, and I've come up with way forward on this particular session of paper, which I believe, because there is a lot of goodwill from the government, we will be able to implement as soon as possible, so that we see the result and enjoy the fruit of our labor. Mr. Speaker, we know that doing this will have positive impact on our GDP. Currently, as a country, we are suffering simply because we do not have, or we are economically suffering because of the financial challenges, and we are not able to create our own wealth and also have enough for our country. But doing this will create jobs for our young people, will give hope to the hopeless, will give Kenya the pride that we need. You know, sometimes, even when we look at Kenya Airways, with all the challenges the company goes through, we look at it and we feel proud of the service that it is giving to the people. And as you know, they clearly say, the pride of Kenya, the pride of Africa, this will be another pride of our country, and it will have positive impact on the entire nation. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that our country, Kenyans, are very hardworking people. They always look forward to a better life. And we know that every year in Kenya, we import thousands and thousands of vehicles. In 2021, there was an increment of 14% from the vehicles that we imported in 2020. In fact, the exact numbers are that 2020, we imported 128 vehicles. And that moved with 14% to 107,499 vehicles. That is huge investment that goes out to another country. In fact, the resources that would have helped us and transformed our own country here is being transferred to another country, whereby we buy second-hand vehicles that come to us. Of course, as the owner of the vehicle, you may be happy, but then, apart from you and your family, no one else enjoys that. But if we encourage our own and come up or develop that vehicle making, and people come up with that, then we will be able to promote that, and Kenyans will be happy and will enjoy. The majority of the vehicles that I mentioned earlier are all imported, and the benefits gone to others. Again, when we look at the duty, the import duty, which is 25%, exercise duty, which is 20%, value added, which is 16%, and import declaration, which is 3.5%. That again increases the cost, which by buying our own vehicles, we'll be able to reduce and see how best we can benefit one another. Mr. Speaker, I have taken note of members' concerns. The implementation committee has to be keen enough, and we see how best this will be implemented. The government is keen enough, and our president in particular is keen enough. And in fact, this works well with our vision and mission. The bottom-up idea has its place in this. And there is need to review this again before we implement. That is also well noted. Setting some budget aside so that we don't just pass this and struggle is our priority. And I'm happy the chairman of budget, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, is here with us. And I'm sure he will give us all the attention that this deserves. Creating space and opportunity to our young ones so that they can exercise the skills, the knowledge they have acquired will give hope to many Kenyans. This will promote us, and soon after implementation, we will start exporting our motor vehicles, and that then will remain in history of our country. I'm happy to associate myself with this particular one, and I thank the entire House for supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, leader. You really needed to finish the matter of replying properly. So give her the mic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to reply. Thank you.
Very well. Member for Mukurweni.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of our Standing Orders 53 and paragraph 3, I wish to request you, Honorable Speaker, to defer putting of the question for this session of paper to another day. Honorable Speaker, I think it will be important that we defer this particular question so that we can have it hopefully next week, and we have the implementation done immediately. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Chair Budget, you'll have a chance to speak on another matter. I can see you had made a request. Members, following the request by the Honorable Kaguchia, I direct that the question for this motion to be put when the House sits next. It's now time to adjourn the House, honorable members. There being no other business, and the time being 6:27 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 29th November at 2:30 p.m.
Critical role in the furtherance of the East African objectives. Honorable Speaker, the Fourth Assembly of the East African Legislative Assembly, which commenced on the 18th December 2017, will come to an end on the 17th December 2022. Consequently, member states are expected to elect members of the Assembly within 90 days before the end of the term of the ongoing Assembly. Honorable Speaker, it is in this regard that the National Assembly and the Senate respectively resolved to establish a joint parliamentary select committee on election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly. Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee was established on the 13th and the 18th October 2022 by the National Assembly and the Senate respectively to undertake the functions. And Honorable Speaker, the committee comprises of the following members of the National Assembly. The co-chair from the National Assembly is the Honorable Wanjiku Muhia, MP. The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, CBS MP. The Honorable Sabina Chege, CBS MP. The Honorable Dr. John Kanyuthia Mutunga, MP. The Honorable Daniel Epuyo Nanok, MP. The Honorable Francis Igei Kipiegon, CBS MP. The Honorable Ruth Adhiambo Busia, MP. Honorable Speaker, the members of the Senate in the Joint Select Committee are co-chair Senator Daniel Gitonga Manso, EBS MP. Senator Raphael Shimera Munzagu, MP. Senator Commissioner Joyce Koech Korir, MP. Senator Miraj Abdularam, MP. Senator Chute Mohamed Said, MP. Senator Joseph Githuku Kamau, MP. And Senator Beatrice Akinyi Ogola. Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee held its first meeting on the 25th of October 2022. And Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Rule 4 of the East African Legislative Assembly elections, the presiding officers, that is the clerk of the National Assembly, the clerks of the two houses, notified the public, Honorable Speaker, via Gazette Notice number 13031, that was dated on the 26th October 2022. In this, an advertisement was placed on both the Standard and the Daily Nation newspapers on the 26th October 2022, inviting Honorable Speaker interested and qualified persons to apply within a period of 7 days from the date of the notice. Honorable Speaker, at the close of application, that was on the 2nd November, the presiding officers noted that although the total number of applications received was 348, a number of other applicants, Honorable Speaker, had submitted multiple applications with the same applicant submitting, Honorable Speaker, up to even 4 applications. Honorable Speaker, on 7th November 2022, the presiding officers made a nomination briefing to the party leadership of both houses of parliament. And Honorable Speaker, on Wednesday, the 9th November, the presiding officers received nomination documents from candidates of political parties and candidates of independent or political parties. Honorable Speaker, a total of 69, as indicated in the report, appeared before the presiding officers, out of whom, Honorable Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza Alliance Coalition presented 15 candidates, and the Azimio la Umoja One Alliance Coalition presented 12 nominees, while, Honorable Speaker, 42 were candidates of independent political parties. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Rule 12 of the rules, the presiding officers gave the public an opportunity to inspect the nomination papers and lodge any complaints they may have had with respect to the candidates' nominations. Honorable Speaker, the inspection was done on Thursday the 10th and Friday the 11th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. as presented, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, at the close of the nomination on Friday the 11th, the presiding officers forwarded the names and nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates to the Joint Select Committees for consideration and complaints lodged during the inspection days. Honorable Speaker, I also present observations that have been made by the Joint Committee Select Committee that the Joint Select Committee observed that the East African Legislative Assembly elections assigns crucial roles in the election process to the presiding officers instead of the Joint Select Committee. And Honorable Speaker, the Joint Committee observed that some of the candidates did not comply with the advertisements in the Daily Nation and the Standard newspapers and the Kenya Gazette of the 26th October. Most of the applicants, Honorable Speaker, did not comply with the provisions of the Election Act as regards qualification of members of parliament, either through a political party or through independent party. Honorable Speaker, based on the aforementioned observations, the Joint Select Committee therefore recommends enhancement to the East African Legislative Assembly elections. One observation is that to enhance the role of the Joint Select Committee, and Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee also made an observation that a framework should be provided for formal campaigns to the candidate. Honorable Speaker, it is now my pleasant duty and privilege on behalf of the Joint Select Committee to present the report on the election of members to the IALA for your consideration. I thank you, and I ask Senator Commissioner Joyce Korir to second.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I want to second the report of the Joint Committee, having read by my very able colleague, Honorable Beatrice. Honorable Speaker, having been a member of this committee, we went through a number of meetings in terms of checking on a number of issues that were to assist us in terms of getting the members to this Legislative Assembly as by the EAC treaty that was signed among the nation involved. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there are a number of issues that committee recommended, and one of them was to amend the East African Legislative Assembly elections to enhance the role of the Joint Select Committee. Honorable Speaker, Honorable, my colleague in the report touched on the issue of the members who applied, and the membership that applied indeed was 348, others having made multiple applications, and having the presiding officers having checked the applications, they found that there were 287. Remember, Honorable Speaker, this was done by the presiding officers, and the Joint Committee was not involved. So those are some of the amendments that we also felt as a committee, that the procedure should involve the members of the Joint Committee from the onset, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that these members who have applied for East African Legislative Assembly, Honorable Speaker, a number of them have been our colleagues in the port houses. We've interacted with a number of them. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, I know the key players on these appointments are the parties, Honorable Speaker. So having been given the list of 15 members from the one of the parties, and the other party is giving us a number of, giving us 9 membership, Honorable Speaker, where we are supposed to have 4 and 5 approval. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is upon the members now to check upon the entire list and come up with the members whom they feel they will represent this nation in the East African Assembly. I beg to support. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community and Rule 13.5 of the East African Legislative Assembly election of members of the Assembly rules, the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of the East African Legislative Assembly, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 15th November 2022. Members, you may now make your contributions. Senator Ojienda.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the motion. Mr. Speaker, the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community in 1999 is an important treaty, and the treaty as contemplates, Mr. Speaker, sir, that within the frame of the treaty, right from the customs union, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there shall be a common market, a monetary union, and finally a federation. I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you have served as Minister for East African Community. And I know that you, like anyone else, is yearning to ensure that we complete the 5 stages and that we see a federation for East Africa. Granted, Mr. Speaker, sir, that every region of the 7-member union, Mr. Speaker, sir, has challenges. Mr. Speaker, sir.
What is your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Apologies to my neighbor, the good Senator of Kisumu. But Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 111, limitation of debate, that the Senate may, on a motion made by any senator in accordance with this standing order, impose a limit in respect of debate of any particular motion or bill by allotting a limited period of time for such debate, by limiting time during which senators may speak in such a debate, or by imposing such limitations. The reason I do this, Speaker, is that you have already allocated 5:30 a time to do the adjournment motion of Senator Enokio Wambua. It is now 4:22. We have to do this motion, and we have a further motion, Mr. Speaker, providing for the election day, specific election day on Thursday, which is before. All that we need to compress and be concluded before that 5:30, Mr. Speaker. That being the case, Mr. Speaker, I wish to request that you limit debate to the members. If members can agree, actually, that maybe 2 or 3 only on one side, 2 or 3 on the other, but then again, because I want to be specific on time, you limit it to maybe 3 minutes per person, Mr. Speaker. I'll really appreciate. I want to ask Senator Medu to second me on that.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I second.
Honorable Senators, I now put the question. The debate on this motion be limited to 2 minutes per 2 minutes. 2 minutes per senator. Honorable Senators, I think the move of the motion has actually indicated that you'll have adequate time to debate on this matter. So let us limit it to 2 minutes per senator. Senator Ojienda, I'm yet to conclude on this matter. Okay. Okay. I have put the question and we are yet to vote on it. So as many as of that opinion say aye. As many of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. 2 minutes per senator. Professor, proceed.
Let me just spend my time wisely. The reason why I seek to contribute on this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, is because, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've previously served as president of the East African Law Society. And I was part of the drafting of the protocol of the Customs Union. I contributed professionally, and I've been part of the process. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I wanted to say is that the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the arms contemplated by the treaty, the summit, the ESCJ, and now IALA, is a very important organ. I was just going to urge members to ensure that they vote for competent people to represent this region in that assembly. I have today, Mr. Speaker, sir, received a lot of interest from individuals who want to go to that assembly, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I know very, very competent ones, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we shall vote for, Mr. Speaker, sir. I urge, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this House, in considering who to vote for Winnie Odinga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Class, can you put the timer on so that we limit time to 2 minutes? The Honorable Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, very quickly, I wanted to make this point that, Mr. Speaker, my small experience from the Pan-African Parliament is that when Kenya stands to speak, people want to hear what Kenya is about to say. Mr. Speaker, the delegation that has gone there has represented us very well. Mr. Speaker, my point is that the people we are going to choose to go and sit in that East African Parliament, they must be the very best of us. And they must be people who have experience, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't want people who are going there and then they are going to start learning how even to address the House. Mr. Speaker, that's an international, it's a regional parliament. And I'm going to urge very, very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that we send people who have already served in this Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. These people will go there and give us good quality debates, good quality representation, worthy of the title Republic of Kenya. Let us not send people who have no experience just because they have political connection. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, reading through the report, the committee has recommended that the rules needs to be amended so that we have clarity on the role of the joint committee, because the rules talk about presiding officers. So I hope the relevant committee will take it up and make sure that the rules are amended appropriately. Also, the provision on the withdrawal of candidates is not clearly stipulated. The committee has recommended that that be looked at. Mr. Speaker, many people have talked about competence, but I think one important qualification is that those who come near the borders should be considered. For example, those who come near the border, Lake Victoria and Tanzania, or Western and Uganda, and those who come from northern part of Kenya with Somali, those who come from Turkana with the southern Sudan, they must be considered because those are people who go through challenges which needs to be addressed under the framework of IALA. So I recommend that we vote for individuals who come from regions which have challenges with the borders and with the East African community. I also encourage members, please vote according to your own conscience. we are told is that some people will go to a PG and a list will be given to them. I think this country is democratic. Let people vote freely and vote for the people they want to vote for, and not to be coerced to vote for particular individuals because the party has given them direction to do that. We must exercise democracy.
Senator Onsoti, your time is up, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable Senator